Kyle Green of Green Mortgage Team is going to tell us how a bad shift at Tim Hortons led to his over $110 million in assets mortgage brokerage. He's grown this large by creatively handling complicated portfolios that many brokers are afraid to touch. He's also going to share with us the top 3 mistakes real estate investors make. Kyle Green, welcome to Biz One-on-One.
Thank you.
And creativity is not something that we normally associate with mortgages.
That's right. Yeah.
So talk to me about how creativity comes into being a mortgage broker.
Most people think that being an artist would be something that's creative, but actually being creative with numbers is something that I happen to be really good at. So an example would be somebody's car payment might be $400 a month, and the car might be 10 grand. If you throw that car payment onto the mortgage, you're actually going to be dropping the payment substantially. 100 grand on a mortgage is $400 a month. So it makes a really big difference by being able to change and actually pay off some of these debts and move it to a mortgage. Also, when you have a larger portfolio, I remember one of my first large deals I did, I had a client that came to me willing to pay obscene rates of something like 10%. We actually redid all 3 of his existing mortgages and saved him $4 grand a month. It was a crazy deal. I remember thinking, wow, it just squeaked by. Client didn't make a lot of income, and he's really, really happy to have everything solved, but it took some creativity to get done.
So it sounds like that's what motivates you, is getting people that don't go down to the bank and it's all smooth sailing.
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
Getting those people qualified and into a home, or moving up into their dream home.
Yeah.
When it's not as simple as it might look on the surface.
Especially when they don't think it's possible. When somebody comes to you and they're already defeated, that's where it's really empowering to be able to help those people.
Now, I've been around the block a few times. I got a few miles on me.
Yeah, yeah.
And I never heard of a mortgage broker telling me to put my car on as part of the mortgage. You can't really do that, can you? You just said you're going to add the car you're going to pay out the car.
Yeah. So you can actually add any debts you want onto your mortgage as long as you have enough equity in the home and you qualify to do it.
Right.
So in general, when you're refinancing, you can't finance more than 80% of the value of your home. Right. So a lot of the time, if somebody with a mortgage payment of $2 grand a month on their $200,000 mortgage, their place might be worth $400,000. Means that you can add on an extra $120,000 onto that if you wanted to. In fact, we use somebody's residence as a vehicle to borrow money to invest in real estate and other investment assets as well. And that's a really big part of what I do. Probably the biggest part of what I do actually is educating people on how home equity line of credit works and how to use that to borrow money to invest in real estate.
Or other things as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything that they would like to invest in, you can use equity in your home to do it.
Yep.
So we talked about the Tim Hortons, or I did. I mentioned that you said it was a bad experience at Tim Hortons.
Oh, yeah,
I take it that you were working at Tim Hortons and you thought there's something else to life than this. No offense to anybody working at Tim Hortons.
Yeah. I just had a really bad day at Tim Hortons. So I was a supervisor. I did come to that fork in the road where, do I continue to do this and maybe be a regional manager in a certain amount of time, maybe 3 or 5 years, or do I find something different? And I remember at the time I had a macroeconomics teacher at college, and we were chatting after class one day, and he's talking to me about how his brother has a boat, a Porsche, a mansion, and I thought, what does your brother do? And he's a stockbroker. So that started getting me into the thinking about finance a little bit more. Anyways, that one fateful day at Tim Hortons, my employer gave me way too many trainees. I needed more help. Started calling from the bottom of the list. Nobody could come in that day except for the manager, and she came in. She was really choked that she had to come in on a Saturday. She wasn't happy about it.
To serve coffee.
Yeah, exactly. And she wasn't happy, and neither was I. And that night, I started went home and I started applying everywhere. Did my resume and started looking for a new career.
Now, how long ago was that you had the Tim Hortons experience?
That was roughly April or May of 2006.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we're talking 10 years ago. you literally were working at Tim Hortons. Now, it doesn't sound like you were the part-time, you were in some kind of supervisory role.
Yeah.
So now you built a $110 million mortgage portfolio. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I got a little lucky. I was actually working for a credit union called Westminster Savings. Worked there for about 5 months. The company was great, but a unionized environment didn't seem like a really good fit for me. The first day on the job, I remember thinking, it's kind of quiet in here. What do we do when it's not busy? And she said, well, you just surf the net. I'm thinking, okay, this doesn't work for me. When I was in college, I was taking 4 or 5 classes, so a full-time workload, and I was working full-time too. That's just who I am, I guess. So that it wasn't quite fitting. I ended up getting into a company that was doing a lot of volume and got to learn very quickly from them. Eventually, after working there for 6 months, I had brokers within that franchise network calling me, asking me how to get a deal done, and they'd been doing it for 10 years and asking somebody who's been doing it for 6 months how to get something done. So that was
when
really
you
cool.
say get something done, let's just touch on it in case some people watching may have never used a mortgage broker.
Yeah.
You just go down to the bank and you apply for a mortgage. Tell me about why people would use mortgage brokers and what are mortgage brokers?
So the easiest way to explain what a mortgage broker does is we negotiate on your behalf and shop about 40 different lenders to find you the best rate and the best product. And then the lenders pay us for sending them the business. Instead of them having brick and mortar overhead of having a branch, paying salaried staff, paying marketing costs, and in general, the efficiency level at the branch isn't quite as good when you have a broker who doesn't get paid if they don't do business. So if the market turns, they're still paying for all that overhead staff, where brokers don't get paid unless they're actually producing business.
So you're basically out there selling the mortgages from all sources of capital. So, but you're not just representing one bank.
Correct.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
So, so theoretically, it's like having an agent shopping on your behalf to get you the best, and it's always up to the buyer of the property to decide if they want to go with the deal.
Yeah.
So in your case, the more complicated or challenging the situation is, the better it is for you.
In general, yeah, because this is what I do all day long, every day. So I don't have to worry about how to do RSPs and RSP loans and things like that. I have an area of expertise. And the more challenging the deal is, if that's my niche, which is working primarily with real estate investors, is about 80% of my client base, that's an area that I really, really know. I know which lenders to go to. I know exactly how to get those deals done. And a lot of our colleagues inside the industry, if the client has more than 2 or 3 rental properties, they just have no idea what to do because that's the first situation they've dealt with like that in the last 3 years.
So the simplest mortgage is on my own home, and I have enough down payment. I have a great credit history, and I can just go to the bank and they give me the cheapest rate possible. What's the other end of the spectrum? And talk to me about I never thought about that before, but if I am a real estate investor, I could have multiple mortgages. I could have 100 mortgages.
Yep.
And you'd work with a mortgage broker like you?
Yeah, I mean, number one, getting 100 mortgages in today's climate might not be as easy as it was before. That being said, touching on getting the best rate. In fact, usually what most people use a broker for is getting the best rate. So I'm not attacking that market as much. Now, most clients, what they'll do is they'll talk to their bank and they'll talk to a broker and they'll figure out who has the best rates. And in many cases, it's what we call non-bank lenders that actually have lower rates than the banks do. They have a smaller office, they don't have as much overhead, and they run a really efficient ship. The key differentiator usually is when clients are looking for a certain product. So a line of credit, for instance, these smaller lenders, all they do is lend money out, bundle it up, and sell it behind the scenes. And banks do that actually with a large portion of their book, but not all of it. But those non-bank lenders don't have deposits. They can't hold a line of credit on their books. And so if you wanted a mortgage plus a line of credit, I'm going to be negotiating with major banks for that, not a non-bank lender.
Right.
But my niche is really, Kyle, my file is complicated. I need some help. And this is where I can sit down with somebody and say, if you restructure things in this way and borrow your down payment from your line of credit, you're going to be able to write off the interest here and do this and do that and set it up so that you can ensure that you qualify each and every time. And I think that the majority of people that handle the mortgages are looking at it from a transactional perspective. They're not looking at how do I, where do you want to be in 5 or 10 years? How do we grow you to get there? How do we start from here and get to here? And that's usually where most other people fail.
And in your case, you're looking to build a relationship with a client that's going to do multiple deals with you.
Exactly, yeah.
So why invest in real estate? I mean, there's many answers to that question. What's your answer?
You make money in 3 ways in real estate. Well, 4 technically, but the major 3 are cash flow, mortgage paydown, and appreciation. So probably the most important key about real estate is you go to a bank, and a bank's going to give you 4/5 of the property value to buy
Right.
that asset, right? So what that means is that for every 1% of appreciation you see, you're actually getting 5% return on investment. So usually in my models for properties in the Lower Mainland particularly, we use about 3% annual appreciation for my projections. It's well underneath roughly the 6% or so that we've seen happen over the last 15 years. But using 3% appreciation gives you about a 15% return on your investment. The typical deal is only about 1 to 4% return on investment from cash flow. But probably the most important key is forget about cash flow and forget it that appreciation ever occurs. With today's low interest rates, just having the tenant cover your expenses and pay down your own mortgage for you is about an 8 to 9% return on investment. And usually I do public speaking events and I say, so who here is getting 8 to 9%?
Right.
And 1 or 2 guys will put up their hands, and sure, you're day trading or whatever and you're making more than that, good for you, but 98% of people aren't. And that's the big key.
And even in a crash, you can, as long as you set yourself up to ride it out, real estate over the long haul never goes down.
It's a very safe asset, and it's a hard asset, right? So it's not inflation proof, but generally it's a hard asset, which means it'll be appreciating if inflation occurs, right?
Okay, we promised our viewers on Biz 101 that Kyle is going to give us the top 3 mistakes that real estate investors make.
All right. Number 1, buy for cash flow, not speculation. We deal with this a lot where clients that haven't been educated on this topic, they go out, they say, oh, I'm going to buy 3 pre-sale condos, and when they're finished, they're going to be worth $100,000 more each, and I'm going to sell the contracts, and I'm going to make $300,000 investing in real estate. Buy for cash flow, as you mentioned earlier, it's a long-term hold. You need to make sure that you're putting money in your jeans every month, not having to pay into it. Because if you lose your job, you can't afford to pay into it.
Got it.
Number 2, surround yourself with people that specifically know investing in real estate. Your typical real estate agent does not say, hey, look at the property I found for you. Here's a list of all the cash flow, your anticipated appreciation, etc.
Tax implications, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly, and the tax implications are huge. So making sure you understand, the capital gains, what is a write-off, etc. Those are really important keys.
And number 3, you
jumped to number 3
tax
first. You did,
implication.
yeah.
Oh, sorry. So there were 3, but I jumped in with the 3rd one.
That's right, yeah.
Kyle, thank you so much for joining us today on Biz 101.
Yeah.
Congratulations on your tremendous success, as you still look like a young entrepreneur to me.
Maybe
So
I am.
congratulations.
Thanks so much. Yeah. Great.
So